The first time it happened, it didn't even feel real. Autumn light was spilling through the trees, painting the playground gold, and I was standing there in my cream jacket pretending to check emails, but really just keeping one eye on my little girl, Claire. 8 years old, blonde hair, catching the sun, swinging back and forth without a sound like she always did. She hadn't spoken a word her whole life. Not one. 8 years of silence. And then this tall guy in a beat-up gray hoodie walked over with his kid, and my daughter whispered, "Hello." I froze. I mean, literally froze. My heart slammed so hard I thought I was going to faint right there on the mulch. I couldn't believe my ears. Her voice was small, shaky, but it was real. For years I had begged, prayed, spent money I didn't even have just to hear one syllable from her lips. And now a stranger walks up, smiles, says hi, and suddenly she breaks her own wall. You have to understand who I was back then. My name's Madison, 34, CEO of a tech company I built from the ground up. I went from pulling all-nighters with a laptop in my dorm to running boardrooms where every man twice my age waited for me to trip. I didn't trip. I made millions dressed sharp heels clicking across marble floors like I owned them. And I did. But at home, I was just a mom who couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. Claire was brilliant. Teachers said she absorbed everything like a sponge, but she never spoke. Not mama, not no, not even a cry as a baby. Doctors ran test after test. Her hearing was perfect. Vocal cords fine. They called it selective mutism, hinted it came from some trauma at birth. But those words didn't help when I lay awake at night listening to the silence press down on the house like a heavy blanket. I would have traded every dollar in my bank just to hear her call my name. And then there was him, Daniel. 6'2", broad shoulders, stubble on his jaw, eyes that looked like they'd seen fire and made peace with it. He used to be a firefighter until a collapsed beam wrecked his back. Now he ran kids programs at the community center, teaching them teamwork through games. And his boy Lucas was a firecracker. The kid bounced across the playground like rubber, talking to everyone, including Claire. Usually she'd avoid eye contact, but with Lucas it was different. He didn't wait for her to answer, just folded her right into his game like she was already on the team. "You're the alien," he told her once, sliding down the slide like a rocket ship. And I swear I saw the corner of her mouth twitch like she almost smiled. Daniel sat down beside me on the bench, 2 coffees in his hand, offering one without asking. "Mind if I join? My kid runs on triple batteries." His voice was warm, rasped a little like someone who'd yelled through smoke too many nights. For some reason, I didn't brush him off. We sat in silence watching our kids. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel judged. The next afternoons turned into a ritual. Lucas spinning adventure tales, pirates, astronauts, dinosaurs, always making Claire the co-pilot, the treasure guard the lookout. She didn't have to talk, just exist. And Daniel steady as a rock, always knowing when to step in without making it a performance. Then came the ball game. A circle of kids passing around a foam ball, each shouting what magic ingredient it added to their imaginary recipe. When it landed in Claire's lap, everyone paused waiting. She just stared, frozen. Lucas started to skip her, but Daniel crouched down, met her eyes. "Everyone gets a turn," he said gently. "What does the magic ball add? I can't hear too well. Maybe say it just a little louder." The silence stretched so long I thought I'd break apart. And then, soft as a falling leaf, she whispered, "Ball." I gasped. Tears blurred everything. 8 years of silence shattered by one word. The other kids barely noticed, kept playing, but Daniel's eyes flicked to mine. He gave the smallest nod like, yeah, this was big, but he wasn't going to turn it into a circus. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. After that, everything changed. Claire started inching closer to the games, rating sand pies with little stars, Daniel handed her, laughing silently at Lucas's dramatic moonwalks. And I started changing too. Instead of hiding behind my phone, I found myself waiting for Daniel on that bench. His calm was addictive, like breathing after being underwater too long. But here's the thing about success: you can't serve two masters. The week my company launched a new product, I missed 2 of Claire's sessions. Sent the nanny instead. Told myself it was temporary, she'd understand. By Friday, she had stopped playing altogether. Walls back up, eyes dim again. And then Daniel sent me a text that cut like a knife. Emma. He always called her Emma needs consistency. She needs to know you value her progress as much as your work. At first, I was furious. Who was he to tell me that I was providing everything? But the longer I stared at his words, the more I knew he was right. I had built an empire for her. But what she needed wasn't an empire. She needed me. So I showed up Saturday. No excuses. Daniel had arranged a small group, just Lucas, another quiet girl, and Claire. They sat on cushions telling a story together. Claire started by drawing an octopus, acting it out with wavy arms while the others laughed. Then Lucas dropped the ball they were pretending was a pearl, and it rolled to her feet. She picked it up, held it out, and said, clear as day, "Here." Not whispered, not accidental, chosen. My knees nearly buckled. Lucas grinned like it was nothing, kept the story rolling. But I saw Daniel's hand tremble as he pushed back his hair. From then on, little victories stacked up. She whispered to Lucas, then to Daniel. Drew comics of their adventures, held up colored cards in games, even mouthed words in the mirror at home. I rearranged my schedule, canceled million-dollar meetings, just to sit on those bleachers and watch her bloom. Daniel and I fell into a rhythm too. Coffee became dinner, dinners became long talks about nights. We both felt like failures. And then came the test. A teacher forced Claire to speak during a presentation. She panicked, locked herself in a bathroom, hyperventilating. I wanted to whisk her home, shield her forever. Instead, I called Daniel. He said, bring her to the park. When we got there, Lucas had set up their very first game, again, the Magic Restaurant. He handed her the ball, and she looked at me, eyes still wet, and said, I want to play again. It was like she wasn't just talking about the game. She was claiming her life. Weeks turned into months. She spoke in whispers to her circle, then small sentences. Then one morning at the playground, she climbed the jungle gym, spread her arms, and shouted, Look at me, I'm flying. Every parent turned. I covered my mouth with my hands, sobbing, and then she climbed down, tugged Daniel's sleeve, and asked, Will you be my dad too? The world stopped. He looked at me, tears streaming down my face, and nodded. I'd be honored. Lucas ran over, declaring, And your mom can be mine if she keeps buying those fancy crackers. Kids are blunt. But Claire smiled, full and radiant, and whispered one word. Family. 6 months later, we stood in that same park, dressed simply, exchanging vows, while the kids giggled with grass stains on their clothes. Claire held the rings. When the officiant asked if anyone wanted to share words, she stepped forward. Her voice steady, she thanked Daniel for waiting, Lucas for being the best brother, and me for never giving up. There wasn't a dry eye anywhere. And when the ceremony ended, the kids released butterflies, Claire's laughter ringing like music I'd waited my whole life to hear. She grabbed both our hands and said simply, Home. But here's what I keep wondering, and maybe you can tell me in the comments. Was I wrong all those years chasing experts and money and treatments when all she needed was patience, play, and people who saw her as whole? Do we as a society rush too fast to label kids broken instead of listening to what they're really asking for? Because I'll tell you this, the day my daughter spoke, it wasn't therapy that unlocked her voice. It was love. It was safety. It was a boy who refused to leave her out, and a man who refused to give up. And maybe that's the lesson we all need to hear. So, what do you think? Do we push too hard or not enough? Should success mean boardrooms and millions? Or being there when your kid finally whispers hello? I want to know your story, your opinion. Drop it below, because sometimes the loudest voices are the ones that start with just a whisper.